Good evening, everybody. With a quorum of members present and the posted time having arrived, I'll call the Public Health and Safety Committee meeting for Monday, February 15th, 2021 to order. The first item on our agenda is the minutes of our previous meeting from 1/18 of 21, copies of which are in the packets. Any revisions or corrections needed to the minutes? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve them. Motion by Peckham, second by Herbst. Further discussion? We'll go ahead and vote on the minutes. We'll take our votes tonight by roll call because we have one member on WebEx. McElhaney? Oh, is she muted?
Aye.
Yep, we got you. Thanks, Becky. Herbst? Wadinsky?
Aye.
Peckham?
Aye.
I'll vote aye as well. Item number 2 is to consider approval or denial of various license applications. We have 2 individuals recommended for denial this evening. By our ordinance, those individuals have the right to address the committee and discuss anything on the record that may be materially incorrect. The first person recommended for denial is Rebecca Bierman. Is Rebecca Bierman with us this evening? Rebecca Bierman. Let the record show Rebecca Bierman has not attended. Jeremy Moeller. Jeremy Moeller. He has also not attended. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to accept or deny licenses as recommended by staff. Motion by Wadinsky. Is there a second? Second by Herbst. Further discussion or questions on licensing? If not, we'll go ahead and vote. Herbst? Wadinsky?
Aye.
McElhaney?
Aye.
Peckham?
Aye.
I'll vote aye as well. And those licenses are then accepted or denied as recommended. Item number 3 is discussion and possible action recommending adoption of a city resolution supporting a statewide ban on conversion therapy practices. This item comes to us from the Liberation and Freedom Committee, who have discussed it at a couple of meetings and are recommending an adoption of a resolution that would support statewide action on the practice of conversion therapy. And, you know, what our resolution basically does is it doesn't issue city fines for that practice, which really aren't effective. What it does is it requests statewide action that would impact the licensure of therapists who are practicing the technique that's referenced. We do have a number of members of the public this evening who would like to speak to this item, and we also have the chair of the Liberation and Freedom Committee. Anyone who wants to come up and speak to that, you guys can take turns, come on up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and we'll record your comments. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. Blake Husky, I'm the chair of the Liberation and Freedom Committee. I live at 903 Franklin Street. So first, thank you for bringing this piece of policy under for consideration, public health and safety tonight. Just a reminder of the Liberation and Freedom Committee and what our mission is. Our mission is to promote an environment that accepts, celebrates, and appreciates diversity within the community by proactively identifying areas of discrimination, providing education, communication, and recommendations to the City Council and to the Mayor of City of Wausau. A background memo was supplied to all of you ahead of time, but just for public record, a little bit of an overview on conversion therapy. It's sometimes called reparative therapy. Sorry, a little tongue-tied. Which is several dangerous and discredited practices aimed at changing an individual's sexual orientation or sexual identity. Hypnotism, aversion therapy, and group therapy are the core techniques in this conversion therapy. Though these are not the only techniques used, conversion therapy can also involve violent role play and reenactment of past abuses. The harm of conversion therapy includes depression, guilt, helplessness, hopelessness, shame, social withdrawal, suicide, suicidal tendencies, substance abuse, among many, many others. Studies indicate that compared to LGBTQ plus young people who were not rejected by their parents or peers, those that have gone under conversion therapy or have been highly rejected, LGBTQ youth, are 8.4 times more likely of attempting suicide, 5.9 times likely report high levels of depression, 3.4 times more likely for use of illegal drugs, and 3.4 times percent more likely increased chance of contracting HIV or STDs. So this, as a group, this is your opportunity to condemn this practice. It's also an opportunity to send a message to your local community, specifically our LGBTQ plus youth, that they are accepted, they are seen, and that we value their safety in this community. Thank you.
Additional comments? Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Jackson Seeger. My address is 525 South 56th Avenue, Apartment 1. So for those of you who don't know, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Jackson Seeger. I am 23 years old, and I identify as a queer transgender man. Almost 4 years ago, at the age of 19, I came out publicly and began my physical transition from female to male. Since then, I have been through a lot when it comes to discrimination, from ending up homeless in the dead of winter to being physically, verbally, and sexually assaulted due to how I identify when it comes to my sexuality and gender identity. These past 4 years have taught me a lot. However, I think the biggest lesson learned is that in order for things to change, you do need to speak up, no matter how scary or difficult it may be. And I'd like to think that I'm proof that you can change things for the better by speaking up and taking action. But I will leave that for you guys to decide. A little over a year ago, I decided to kick off this resolution by bringing it to Blake after I had a personal experience where I was told I was mentally ill and that I needed help and that there was therapy to fix me. As for those of you who may not be familiar, I know Blake touched on it quite a bit. Conversion therapy is also known as reparative therapy, and it is a very dangerous and dehumanizing practice that targets primarily LGBT youth and seeks to change their sexuality and gender identity. There are countless types of conversion therapy, including but not limited to praying the gay away, electroshock therapy, physical and sexual abuse, torture, and more. I not only identify within the LGBT community, but at the age of 19, I was fortunate enough to start an LGBT support group up in Wausau, known as Wausau Trans Fam Alliance. Running this group has given me the amazing opportunity to work with some really amazing local teens and young adults, many of which have gone through conversion therapy. I have not only listened to their stories, but I do feel their pain. Something I do find even more disturbing is that as of today, conversion therapy is legal in 26 states. Of course, our home state of Wisconsin being one of them. When I came across this information, I knew I had to do something, and that's why I'm standing here in front of you today. You guys being here today is definitely a step in the right direction, and I couldn't be more grateful. Growing up as a closeted queer transgender youth is definitely scary, but being a target of a practice so violent and damaging is worse. As I stand here in front of you today, I do hope you can see the truth. That truth being that reparative therapy doesn't work. And instead of helping our youth, has hurt and destroyed them on so many levels and will continue to if we don't make some sort of change. I do hope you choose to stand on the right side of history today, not for myself, but for the youth and for those who have already fallen victim to this practice by passing this resolution and condemning reparative therapy. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to make public comment? Come on up, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Timothy Madaris Tanner. I'm 59 years old and I live in the corner of Grain and 3rd Street. And my story starts way back when I was 3 years old in 1964. I pretty much felt like I was a girl back then. And it was amazing because, give you an example, my mom worked at Hasbro, a toy factory. She would bring home G.I. Joes every night. I wouldn't go near him with a 100-foot pole. I was looking for the Barbie dolls. I'd be playing with the Barbie dolls. Back then, I had a great aunt and a great uncle that were priests and nuns. I was raised for 18 years Catholic, and I ended up going to Catholic college after that for 4 years. And going way back to, let's say, my teen years, my dad was a golf pro, big He-Man golf type. And he would get drunk every night because all his buddies would buy him beer, etc. And he was a strong Catholic, which is kind of strange because even though he was drunk all week, he'd go to church on Sundays. And my mom was the protector. She would watch out for us because my dad would come home and he would pick me up and throw me into the wall till my head was bleeding, or belt me till I had blood coming off my back, or throw a bed frame on top of me, calling me a pansy because I wouldn't fight the guys at the golf club, for example, where he was dragging me there at 12 to 13 years old to caddy and carry 70-pound golf bags as a little kid. He tried teaching me golf. I had no interest in it. I always wanted to hang out with the women during the holidays at Thanksgiving and Christmas. And they'd be in the kitchen talking about their recipes. And I had an aunt who was a hairstylist, and I was always interested in what she's doing. My dad would just grab me by the arm and drag me into the other room. And if I even showed that I was having any feminine tendencies at all, when I got home, he'd throw me against the wall again and he'd beat me. I remember some nights I was opening up the cupboard and trying to back into there as he was kicking me in the gut, etc. One thing with my dad, I'll jump forward a little. Just 2 years ago, I said, Dad, remember that little boy that you were beating the heck out of and you'd call the pussy? I said, inside he was your daughter. And he started crying and he apologized to me. I kind of educated him on various things. Since I consider myself a straight woman, I said, Dad, I'm still straight inside, and I'll always beat Tim to you, but can you at least give me a chance to be myself? And he did. So these last 2 years, I moved here about 2 years ago, and I met Jackson online, and I went to one of the Wausau Trams fan meetings, and it kind of unlocked the door to my memory of the past and what I've been holding on to for so long, for 46 years, about 46 years. I was in the Coast Guard for 12 and a half years also. If I mentioned that to anybody in the Coast Guard, they would have called what's a blanket party to me. They would have stuck a blanket over me and bet me up with any hard object they could find. I've seen gay people come out on ships that ended up hemorrhaging because somebody put a broomstick in the wrong end of the person. All kinds of things like that. I had to play the tough guy role in the military. I was training the FBI and the Secret Service and the CIA and you name it. And you see these movies now. Demi Moore was a Navy SEAL in one of them. You've got Leia Ali now, she's a boxer. You've got Ronda Rousey, she's a fighter. There's a lot of strong women out there. When I was a kid, it was Billie Jean King. You know, you remember her, and there was Martina Navratilova who came out. So it's very difficult to explain to people and to educate them that you can be straight and call yourself a woman even though you have the appearance of a man. I had a a really great friend in high school, best of friends, but I wanted him to take me to the prom, and he couldn't because I wouldn't go that route with him because I didn't have, what I considered to be the right body parts, etc., to do it. And through all that Catholic time, the thing they pound on your head is, if you do anything like that, you're going straight to hell. I was so scared that when I was in high school, I was sitting in math class, and I couldn't stop shaking because I knew as soon as I go home, I'm going to get beaten again. And not just at home, but on the way home, there were bullies waiting for us at the bus stop who would kick me into the ground. I had a guy throw a boulder at my head and spit in my face and tell me he'll kill me if he sees me again. But between my law enforcement networking experience, which I'd like to help in Wausau, I know I'm going to another meeting with the mayor and a few other people in a few weeks, and there's going to be some representatives from the law enforcement community as well as the health community there. When I was in Providence, Rhode Island, they had a Pride Day out there, which is much larger than I heard you have out this way. I've been here 2 years. And they would bring groups like Aspirus there to educate people on AIDS and protection. And, there were even churches, such as you have the United Universalist Church, which welcomes gay people in there. So that was a big eye-opener to a lot of gay people that think they're going to hell. They actually had the chance to be accepted by a church community. There's just so many people, as Jackson was saying, that try to kill themselves because they don't know what's out there. If we just had a team that could work with the law enforcement, work with the hospital, and just give our feedback and help out, things may change. You'll notice with most of us, we respect straight people, and I do because I had to act like one for 40-something years. So I understand that. I have a lot of faith that things are going to change, and I always had since I was a little kid. And anything that I can do or we can do to just help people understand what's going on. We don't want to step on their boundaries. We just want to help out and live free. That's it. Okay, thank you for
Excellent.
listening to me.
Thank you for your comments.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone, for your comments. I know it's not easy. Does anyone else want to make comment to this issue at all? If not, the committee will go ahead and start its discussion. Mayor, did you want to make some remarks?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for coming and supporting and speaking your truth. I know it's not easy, so thank you. This is really important that we all can hear directly from you, so thank you. This is really one of those things that maybe I didn't understand it a few years ago, but over the last my terms on county board, we had kind of a raucous discussion about Pride Month. I've been invited into groups I maybe didn't have experience with before, and it's clear to me that people have been pushed to the side, made to feel less than, depressed, maybe not treated well. So I think it's really important that we recognize that Wausau is here for everybody. We care about everybody, no matter how you identify, your history, all of those things. So I think that's the number one thing, or the first thing. And then the second thing is this, is standing with these communities and making sure that they're not being harmed by people who are supposed to protect them. And I know that we had kind of a discussion about who is the oversight authority. I think that we got to a really good place here on this because the state really is the oversight authority, and we want to make sure that they're doing their job. But if we hear about this happening here, you can bet we don't want that happening here. I don't want conversion therapy happening in Wausau. And I want everyone to know that I think it's unacceptable and that we think it's unacceptable. So I am very in support of this ban. So thank you to everyone who's added to this and talked about this for years. So that's what I have to say about that, I guess.
Thank you for that. You'll notice in the packet materials that 11 other Wisconsin municipalities have also taken up the same cause. and passed resolutions opposing conversion therapy. And I think it's important, when the Liberation and Freedom Committee was originally conceived of, its goal was to make Wausau a welcoming place for everyone. And yet, at the start of that process, it was difficult to figure out, in its infancy, where the municipality fit in some of the solutions. And so, over time, that committee has morphed, and it really has taken on a diverse group of members who have shared interests and diverse interests at the same time. But they've brought us these things to talk about that are so vitally important in a community that without that insight, our normal standing committees probably would not think to start those conversations. And so, I think if our goal is that we want our city to be welcoming for all, efforts like this are really where that starts. And it's really encouraging our state leaders who issue licenses to professionals who provide therapy, encouraging that state body and that licensing body to pass reforms that will revoke the licenses of people who are caught practicing such techniques. And sometimes it helps when municipalities speak with one voice, and a resolution is the way for us to do that. Obviously, if we decide to pass it here at the committee level, in a couple weeks, it'll go to the Wausau Common Council. If they pass it, it'll be sent to all of our leaders down in Madison, and they'll be asked to take up that resolution. Obviously, it's their choice if they will or won't, but I think without communities coming together to speak to those leaders, they also may not realize, how vital those discussions are. Just like we needed the Liberation and Freedom Committee to bring us these issues that are, alive and well in the community that we may have been tone deaf to, or that we didn't even realize were what they are. And, I think if we want to change how people perceive our community and whether they come here and feel welcome or don't, starts with things like what we have here tonight. So I think that, first, I thank the committee for bringing it to us, and I think it's an important discussion for us to have. Committee members, how do you guys feel about the resolution? Pat, go ahead.
Find my switch. I will, I don't know if I can do all the stuff I want to do here in one swoop or not, but you can guide me. I was predisposed to support this before I read the packet, but the excellent material that was provided in the packet convinced me further, and the powerful testimony we've heard here today convinced me even further that this is kind of a no-brainer. We should just do this, and it's the right thing. We did receive separately a letter from an individual who was concerned that the healthcare community and the mental health care community know about this. So I guess I would just ask that somebody at City Hall make an effort to get the word out that this is, assuming we pass this, that it's going to be considered at the city council level. I think we should act on this today. I don't think we should delay. And there's a minor wording error. I think the wording started out with the ordinance idea in mind. And the third from the last, whereas, there's a reference to a proposed draft of an ordinance for consideration. And then they turn right around and call it a resolution. So if that could just be changed to resolution, that would clean that up. So
Sure. Would you like to make a motion to approve with that amendment?
that's exactly what I would like to do.
Okay, so we have a motion then to approve the measure, changing the word ordinance in the third from the last whereas to resolution so that it matches throughout. Is there a second to Mr. Peckham's motion? Do we have a second to approve the resolution?
I'll second.
Second by McElhaney. Further discussion, we have a hand up on WebEx from Alder Killian and then Alder Herbst. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am the District 3 older person, and I sit on the Liberation and Freedom Committee. and I'm proud of the committee's effort and my colleagues' efforts on the committee to bring this here this evening. District 3 has a rather unfortunate history in this realm of equality, that being equality related to sexual orientation, I think. But that chapter of the district's unfortunate history is currently closed, and I hope that it remains tightly closed. And it is clear that conversion therapy deserves its proper place in the waste bin of harmful pseudoscience, right along with similar discriminatory quackery like eugenics. So it's my opinion, if two consenting adults love one another, it is not an illness. I would assert that hatred is an illness, but not love, never love. So I would like to express to the committee my strong support for this resolution supporting this ban this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Alder Herbst.
I just want some questions answered. I have received, and possibly it's in your packet as well, from a medical person, and I'm just going to read the verbiage. Number 1, is a practice of conversion therapy happening in Wausau? What is the reason this was brought forth at this time, and why is there a need for this ordinance? 2, because of the controversial nature of this topic, and the potential implication it has, both good and detrimental, are all the local mental health and counseling agencies in Wausau aware of this ordinance, and have they had a chance to weigh in on the appropriateness or harms of this ordinance? Likewise, have all the medical establishments in Wausau and their legal counsels been informed? Because the Spirus, MCHS, Ascension, we have many pediatricians and family medicine physicians in Wausau. All mental health and medical professionals have licensing and boarding organizations that supervise professional activity. Formal avenues for complaints and concerns exist. Thus, is this ordinance even necessary?
Well, let me start by saying that when this first started, before it got to Public Health and Safety, when the Liberation and Freedom Committee was working on it, we did have some dialogue with some medical professionals and mental health professionals. And then I'd also talked with Chairman Opal Wahoski about his proposal. And the proposal did start out as an ordinance. And I think it's important to talk about the difference between an ordinance and a resolution. A resolution is our ability to speak with one voice to our state leaders to resolve that the practice does not have a home here, that we don't want to see this happening to people. However, it does not impose municipal fines and forfeitures. So the professional that wrote to you, that wrote to all of us, was concerned about an ordinance. The only penalty for a municipal ordinance is a money fine, similar to giving someone a parking ticket. Well, that has no impact. If someone is actually practicing conversion therapy, giving them a municipal fine will not stop the practice. The person still holds a license, they continue the municipal consequence, and when you would try to take such a citation to municipal court, the mental health professional has no way to defend themselves because they can't release their treatment records to a municipality for a ticket like that. Our legal team, if they were trying to prosecute a ticket like that, also can't source the therapy records to verify if it happened or it didn't. And so the best place for the enforcement to happen is at the state level with the licensing board that controls the credentials of those providers. And so that's how this became a resolution. It's purposely not an ordinance. It's not an ordinance because an ordinance doesn't do the job. And what needs to happen is we need the state to take action at the licensing level. And so for us to issue little municipal tickets is not only useless, it's impractical. And so what we need is a larger effort through this resolution to give the state a push so that when they are, because the state, when there's a complaint made to a state board, they can access the therapy records and investigate the case to determine if that therapy was taking place or not, and issue related consequences, including suspending or revoking the license. Now, if the state would take action like we're asking and ban the practice, then that comes with a set of automatic consequences where, they could take the license. That stops the practicing. But when we were first talking about this, the word ordinance kept coming out. And that was a concern in the mental health community, is you can't prosecute or defend a municipal ticket for something that is bigger than a city, one city. And so that's how this got to be a resolution. So all this is a message for us to send to our state representatives to say, hey, take this up at the state level. It needs to happen, and the time is now. But we would not be issuing municipal penalties to anybody. So what she's concerned about in the letter won't be happening. Go ahead, Dawn.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for clarifying that. I certainly do approve of the program, or the resolution. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead,
I
Mary.
guess there's just a couple things I wanted to add in here. You and I both talked to somebody who is in the therapy world and had some really good insights here. And one of the things that he told us was that the American Psychology Association already says this is unacceptable practice.
Correct.
So anybody who's worth their salt in the therapy world has bought into the APA guidelines already and says, I'm not going to do this. But why do we have to make a resolution of this sort right now? We say a lot of things about what we don't want going on here before that happens. It's a prevention measure. It's protecting people's lives who identify as such. So I think this is an important step for us.
Okay, thank you for that, Mayor. Any other committee members wish to offer comment? Okay, go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, I think the mayor just made a good point, and that it's just kind of an announcement or is taking a position that, this is what we believe, something we believe has no place here, and kind of serving notice that if we do become aware of it, that we're going to report it to the appropriate state level officials.
Yeah, in a minute, we'll be doing that. So, any other committee members have comment? If not, seeing a motion and a second, do we have one more public comment? Sure, come on up. And state your name and address.
Hello, my name is Miko Jenkins. My address is 1415 Hughes Avenue in Weston.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's come to my attention that this is an issue, but I want to make a point that it's not necessarily in therapy. It's actually usually in underground basements, controlled by usually a pastor or even random people off the street, and belittling the person and actually making it a threat and harming the person. Not just by physical, but also mental coercion and emotional coercion. And I believe that this issue needs to be addressed, that no therapist is going to say this is happening in my office, because it's not happening in offices. It's happening in our streets, at our homes, in our churches. And that is what's the problem, not the actual offices. Because I know plenty of offices here in town will downright say this is not allowed. And that we need to actually talk to people in our communities, such as our community members and churches, and actually address this issue that this is harming people, not just everybody else. And that LGBT people are here. We're our friends. We're friends. I'm a transgender woman.
Okay.
And it's making me sad that the fact that people think it's just actually in an office setting. It's actually in people's homes. It happens. And it must stop.
Right. And that's where I think if we can get that statewide ban, that really then solves it statewide in all communities, all counties, and that we can really speak with, one voice to create that concerted message. So,
But does that actually stop anything, actually physically stop someone? Because like I said, it doesn't happen on the open. It's actually the shadows. And actually in front of our faces sometimes.
right. Go ahead, Mayor.
I guess one of the questions I have about this is that I don't think unregulated therapy is allowed. So I think that's another instance where we can actually report that to the state licensing board, and they will take care of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But that's basically my biggest concern is the fact that it actually is unregulated.
Sure.
And that people actually can go to churches and say that this is therapy. And that's actually what they do in the military sometimes is they say this is therapy by the clergy. So that's my issues.
Okay.
But thank you.
Thank you for making those comments. Additional questions or comments? If not, with a motion and a second on the floor, we'll go ahead and vote on the item. Wadinsky?
Aye.
Peckham? McElhaney?
Aye.
Herbst? I'll vote aye as well, and that item is approved. That will likely go to the Common Council on the second Tuesday of March, is when we expect the council to take that matter up. Thank you, everyone, for coming, though, and for sharing your stories, and it's very helpful, and, hopefully we will start to spark some real change, and we'll spark it at a large enough level that there'll be a widespread impact, not just a small little local impact. So, thank you all. Item number 4 on our agenda is discussion and possible action on approval of an amendment to the Emergency Management Services Agreement between the City of Wausau and Marathon County. And you've got some copies or materials in your packets about that contract and some revisions, along with a memo from Tara indicating a synopsis of some of those changes. Does anyone have questions for her on that item? Go ahead, Mayor.
I don't have questions. But I do want to say that if this sounds familiar, it's because it is. You talked about this at Finance Committee about funding this. Now we're coming back with the actual contract.
Sure.
So this is about being able to plan a little bit better strategically. As we learned over the last year, we need opportunities to plan for big events. So
Right.
that's what this is about. I see that our guy, Phil Rentmeester, is on the call. He's been a big part of this discussion.
He is also our Emergency Management Director. Does anyone have questions on this for him at all? Or for our Assistant City Attorney who's worked through the legal machinations of creating the agreement? If not, is there a motion to approve the item? Motion by Herbst, is there a second? Second by Wadinsky. Further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote. McElhaney?
Aye.
Herbst? Peckham? Wadinsky?
Aye.
I'll vote aye as well, and that item is approved. Item number 5 is the operations report from the Fire Department for January 2021. You have that report in your packets. Anything that you wish to ask Deputy Chief Bartek about regarding the report? Anything notable on the report that you want to talk about, Chief Bartek? Come on up.
Good evening. Nothing too terribly big. Of course, we've had just a recent event of a fire on Kickbush Street that wouldn't have been in your current packet. That'll be in the next month's packet. But pretty average January. We're seeing getting back to normal numbers. The overall numbers for 2020 we did see a reduction in call, but we believe that was over that COVID period where we saw a drastic reduction in March and April. And then it picked up steady back to normal pace towards the end of the year. So nothing too notable on that, but I'm available for questions on any of it.
Okay. Does anyone have questions? If not, we'll place the Fire Department's report on file. Thank you. Item number 6 is tavern activities, compliance checks, and law enforcement activities, and you have that report also in your packets. Anybody have questions for Chief Bliven on that report? Anything on the report that you wanted to discuss, Chief?
There's nothing on the report that I want to discuss, but within the last week and a half, we did do the compliance checks in the massage therapy location, so I just wanted to give you an
yes.
update on that. So there was 29 original businesses listed and identified in the city of Wausau that were massage therapy places. 4 of those 29 we found not to be any longer in business. There were 2 businesses that were not in compliant with state statute and license requirements that were issued citations either to the ownership or to employees at the massage therapy locations. They have upcoming court dates here in Wausau City, Wausau, right here with our city
Municipal Court?
Thank you, municipal court. So we've done those compliance checks. There has been some non-compliance, so hopefully that will help and remedy the situation. And we will continue to do follow-up on those locations, especially ones that were not compliant. All of the establishments that we went into were very receptive with officers being there. They were appreciative of the work that was being done. So that's kudos to you for passing that ordinance to allow us to do that. And then there is a little bit of a difficulty because the licenses actually expire the end of this month from the state. So there was some overlap of people kind of waiting to February 28th and that kind of thing. So, and not sure on how the renewals work or when they'll be put into effect, but we're working through that. So I just want to give you an update that we have done some of those compliance checks.
Excellent. Anybody, go ahead, Pat.
What were the compliance issues that you found at the two that you?
Yeah, so
got
the notes I
cited?
have in my report that came from Lieutenant Paul's indicate that somebody was cited for allowing 2 employees to be operating with no Wisconsin license, and both employees were cited for failing to have a Wisconsin state license. And then the other location, we issued 1 citation for allowing an employee to be operating with no Wisconsin license.
Did those happen to be the establishments that you were concerned about in the first place? The ones that, the other?
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right. So then we know that that at least is having some measure of effectiveness, I guess, if you've been
Right.
able to get in there and get those citations out.
Correct.
Okay. Committee members, any other questions about the tavern or the police report? Go ahead, Dawn.
Chief Livin, what's happening with Lapnose Sports Bar? They've got up to, I believe, what, 75 demerits right now?
I don't think we issued any demerits on this most recent report. We did have an incident there. We did make an arrest out of Lapnose. I'm just pulling up the report here. But there was no demerit points that came as a result of this last month's report.
They had 2 in December
Right.
that got them to 75. Dawn's right, they are at 75.
They are at 75. I'm just saying we didn't have any this most recent month.
Right.
So,
It was also interesting to see that aftershock hit the paper again. It's interesting to read. I mean, numerous extra patrols have continued through January, a total of 36. Wow.
yeah, and so we've done a lot of extra patrols as a result of the neighborhood complaints around the establishment there. And we have made some additional contacts, and we have gone inside the establishment to do checks for licensing and that kind of thing. We're not really met with warm regards when we go into the establishment. I think that's pretty clear. But,
No,
the
it
last
sounded like
month,
there
there
was a
weren't
little
any
grumbling, yeah.
violations, so.
Well, that's just it. And, I think that all of our license holders know that police presence and compliance checks are part of the business and part of the license that we give them. And so I certainly hope that there would not be continued grumbling about your presence there. That's kind of a situation that in many cases they brought on themselves.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad to see that they were through there that many times. I think that when this first started, there wasn't such a presence because, often, people were afraid to call or they, weren't reporting like they should be, and they tolerated it, basically until they couldn't tolerate it anymore and then started reporting. And we've seen that with other establishments too, where the neighborhood has not reported and they're to the point where they're maxed out before we know there's that much of a problem, I guess. And the fact that the stepped-up patrol is happening has been very helpful
Yeah.
with those neighbors, so.
You bet. And I'm not necessarily concerned about their grumbling when we go in there. I don't expect them to be happy when law enforcement's in the establishment, as long as they're in compliance. But I
Right.
do think, when the ownership and the employees of the establishment are grumbling and are it's not that they're uncooperative, but they certainly don't like our presence, which isn't the normal reception that we get in establishments. They're, usually cooperative, hey, thanks, have a good night, which isn't what we're seeing here, which I think is indicative of how they feel about the restrictions placed upon them and their cooperation with those restrictions. So
Sure.
time will tell. I mean, when the summer comes and, people are outside more. I mean,
Right.
we expect to have less complaints this time of year because people aren't outside, the windows
Right.
are closed, those kinds of things.
There's
So-
been an amazing amount in spite of the winter and
I agree.
COVID-19. So,
I agree.
I can only imagine what the summer is going to be, but hopefully they can figure that out. It was interesting to see that the owner was on premises during the one visit and the owner was intoxicated. Luckily, there was a sober bartender. So I was, I guess, glad to see that someone was in control that was not in violation of the impaired server ordinance. So
Right.
good to know. But thank you for that continued vigilance because I think that neighborhood really appreciates that.
Bet.
So, any additional questions on the report at all? If not, we'll place the police department's report on file. So, thanks, Chief. The last item on our agenda is communications. I don't have any this evening. Does anyone else have communications? If not, that moves us to our last item, which is to adjourn. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Peckham. Is there a second? Second by Herbst. Members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We'll stand adjourned. No one ever says no. Thanks, everyone.